Welcome to Human Driven AI. I'm Jennifer Jones Mitchell. Let's get into it. Today, we have an exciting show. We have an amazing guest. Winston Burton is the SVP of SEO at Acronym. He's a regular contributor to Search Engine Journal, and he is one of the leading voices on SEO today. So, Winston, it's so good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, pleasure. Pleasure's all mine. I appreciate the time this morning and looking forward to having a fruitful discussion.
I'm excited. I know AI, generative AI and SEO is a huge topic. But let me just start by asking you to give us just some insight into the overall impact of Gen AI on SEO.
So to be honest with you, it's definitely impacting everything we do, right? There's new tools that are coming out. Like honestly, I can't even keep up. But it's definitely impacting things from three perspectives, right? Making us quicker, more efficient, and smarter, right? A human could only interpret, a certain amount of data, while a computer could interpret things and analyze things at a much faster rate. I think it was like petrobytes or something I've never even heard of before that computers are allowed to process information, which is of course much quicker than a human could do. So it's definitely changing things from an overall content perspective. A lot of agencies are starting to use from a content ideation standpoint, AI to help, with finding ideas. What should I write about? Again, it helps pick things a lot quicker than, if you were to do your standard keyword research and say, okay, let's say if you're in the banking industry, what are the 5 tips to, get like a savings account or a checking account or something like that, right? So it's definitely helping from that. In addition to like short form content, definitely AI is great, right? For example, it takes an SEO anywhere between 10 to 20 minutes to craft a good title tag and meta description, and some short form body content. Computer could do that in 2 seconds, right? You just got to edit it, make it your own, make sure it's useful, make sure it's relevant and covers the brand voice and really what you're trying to get across. So it's definitely doing a lot of those things and taking I don't want to say the work out of work, but it is kind of taking the work out of work, right? And it's making us more efficient so we could focus on overall strategy and really getting things that really matter done in a quicker time period.
Yeah, I love that. I agree. I'm using it constantly, not just like you said, to create content, but to generate ideas and strategies and,
Yep,
even things like how do I get more backlinks? I'll ask ChatGPT that and it'll
exactly.
give me recommendations. And I think that's key because so many people are only using it to generate content rather than actually strategize. And that's to me where the greatest strength is. But
Absolutely.
you mentioned content. Now, as long as I've known you, you have said content is the new cookie.
Yes,
So,
correct.
does AI then supercharge that content?
I would say to a certain extent because you can get content, a lot quicker. Whether it's quality, that's kind of questionable depending upon who you ask. I mean, Google came out with the helpful content update. It's all about giving users what they need, what's relevant to them, and what's going to satisfy the information need, right? 9 times out of 10, you ask ChatGPT or whatever kind of AI, large language model you're using, a question. It might not be factual. It might not be, exactly what you need. So you got to kind of take it with a grain of salt and use it to your advantage to say, okay, it created this content, in a fraction of, a second, but I need to make it my own, right? I need to
Yeah.
edit it. I need to make sure it's grammatically correct, it's factual, etc. So I think it helps from that perspective. But again, you got to do the fact checking, right? And if you don't do that, you're just putting, I don't want to say crap, but if you're putting garbage on the web, you're not going to rank well because it's not going to satisfy users and needs.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I'm telling everybody all the time that you want to think of Gen AI as giving you that first draft because you cannot go with that draft. To your point, there could be incorrect information.
Absolutely.
Certainly, it could be just not great
And a lot of bias as
information.
well.
Yes, because it's all trained on the internet, which is full of bias. So,
Exactly, exactly. And not
yeah,
everything you hear
naturally,
on the internet or see on the internet is truthful, right? Yeah, it's
shocking.
like my 15-year-old son, like I tell him something, he's like, well, Google says this. And I'm like, wait a minute. Google's great, but all that information that Google's bringing back is not 100%, accurate. So you got to take some things with a grain of salt, right? Some things are good, but again, it's the internet, so you got to use wisdom.
Absolutely. Well, let me ask you this. because there is some confusion. I have heard from some people that Google will recognize and penalize AI generated content. And then other people say it doesn't. So, what's the truth here?
So, from my perspective, honestly, I think something is going to come sooner or later because, again, a lot of people are just taking things straight from ChatGPT, straight from Jasper, or whatever large language model they're using, and just placing it on their site, right?
Mm.
Again, going back to the helpful content update, if it's not helpful, it's not useful, it's not relevant, you're not going to rank well, right? Google has so much end user data. They know specifically what people want and what people need. And again, if your content doesn't meet those quality standards and give people what they want, you're not going to rank well. You can't just create, content just for the sake of creating content, right? You got to create content that's really going to satisfy somebody's information needs. So if you're not doing that, then you're really not going to rank well.
Yeah, AI or not, if it's
Exactly.
not valuable, yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
What about with keyword optimization? Does AI really help with that in terms of getting real-time data and feedback and being able to then adjust and assess quicker?
So I would say yes and no. So a lot of the AI out there right now is not in real time.
Mm,
The differentiation between Google and, excuse me, Bart and ChatGPT is, of course, Bart is using Google's system, right, which is bringing information back from the web. So I
mhm.
guess you could say that's kind of real time, whereas versus ChatGPT, that language model is kind of inhibited and stopped at 2021. So anything, if you were to ask, ChatGPT any questions on 2023 data, they're going to give you the response, hey, I can't go back. I can't get that information, and I only have information up to 2021. However, there are some plugins that you can integrate with ChatGPT to make it crawl the web. So, in essence, it's real time if you put in that plugin, and that plugin is getting information directly from the internet as it happens. But straight out the box, it's not going to be real time, and again, you got to check that information.
What plugins do you like that do that?
Honestly, I have not played around with that plugin too much. A lot of it is like, from my understanding, is from like WordPress and things like that. And there's a couple
Yep.
other plugins that honestly I just haven't played around with it yet.
Okay. I know I'm using Yoast has got a new feature there that
Okay, great.
yeah, might check it out. Let me know what you think and
Yeah, no,
we'll
absolutely.
cut that
I'm not
part out.
really big on WordPress. I'm more of an enterprise, level guy.
Mhm.
I don't really use WordPress too much, but it's okay from my perspective. It's not the most user friendly thing in the world. But again, that's just my own humble personal opinion.
No, I definitely agree with that. Well, okay, so I know that Google just announced this. I want to make sure I say it right. Search generative experience, which shows contextual video and images as part of AI generated search results. Um, what does this really mean?
So basically, we're in an age of visual search where, typically, going back for 5+ years ago, the search would just be, just 10 blue links or and things like that. It's dramatically changed. You have imagery, you have video,
Yeah.
you have all these things that are coming into the search and the results. And again, it really depends on, what your intent is. So, for example, my 15-year-old son, he likes to cook, right? So if he wants to say, okay, how do I make a Jamaican beef patty, right? He wants to see a video on how to actually do it. So, something like a text form, probably not going to give you what you need. We're in an age of visual search where, if you could show, okay, these are the ingredients, this is how much you need to put in, this is how you set the time for the oven or whatever you're using, then that's going to go a long way because it's a lot of, things that you could visually see. And as humans, we like things that move, we like things that are different. So instead of the same boring, 10 blue links, actually, it's not even 10 blue links anymore. Google introduced the scrollish pages now. So if you look in the search results, you're going to get a ton of different results. So I expect click through rates are definitely going to change depending upon, the query, because again, it's not just limited to 10 blue links anymore.
Mm. Well, what do you think? Like, do you have one or two practical tips that marketers can do to really amplify their SEO through AI right now?
Definitely be as descriptive as you can. I know that if you don't get specifically what you're looking for, ask ChatGPT or whatever you're using. Do they understand what you're trying to get? Right. Always refine things, and ask it to write it in a way that's more human like instead of machine language. So there's a lot of prompts out there that you could definitely Google and research, that you could ask it to write it as that you're a human, and then it's going to give you much more better written language, like it's coming from conversational tone, like I'm talking to you right now. There's a plethora of AI checkers out there, that you could definitely check. You copy and paste in your content. Writer.com has one. Zero GPT has one. CopyLeaks has one. So there's a bunch of different tools out there that you could check, and it's going to highlight all this information. Again, what these AI tools are looking for is patterns, right? So if it finds a patterns or certain words that humans don't necessarily use, they're going to be like, wait a minute, this is AI generated text, right? And I've seen instances of that. Some tests that I ran myself, that you're like, okay, yeah, I could see the patterns analysis here, right? So they're using predictive analysis to be like, well, okay, yeah, this word doesn't really make sense. It's based upon patterns and things like that, and machine would write, rather than I would write or you would write. So definitely check those tools, and it highlights those areas that are AI generated, and then I would go back and just make it yourself and make it your own, right? And then you go back again, once you 100% modify what they're saying is AI driven content. Let's say if they're giving the score of like 30% or 40%, you go back and edit it, you run it again, and make sure it really sounds good. It's really, useful from an end user perspective. It gives the audience, what they need. It's visual and things like that. And then you should be okay.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I love what you said because it's so true. Every time I see something that is so clearly AI generated, it'll always have that in conclusion. I mean, nobody writes like that,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Exactly.
As soon as I see that, I'm like, okay, ChatGPT wrote this.
Yep.
Yeah, I think a big part of it, though, is what you're saying too, is making sure it sounds human and in your voice. I've been trying to teach people how to train ChatGPT, Claude, Bard, all these tools, how to replicate in your writing style.
Exactly.
Um, it's so important. It really is. And it's so easy to do. Just a refresher for our listeners here. All you have to do is upload some of your writing or your client's writing to the AI, ask it to analyze that writing, name it. And then from now on, anytime you say, take this and put it into that style, it's named,
Exactly.
it knows it. Yeah, right.
Exactly. No,
And then,
absolutely. 100%.
and it sounds
100%.
human then. It
Yeah, it
sounds
definitely
normal.
does. Absolutely. Yeah. Or even if you take an article, I'll give you a perfect example, right? So I recently updated my search engine journal bio, right? So what I had was, it was okay, right? I wrote it myself, right? Not the best writer in the world, but I'm okay, right? So I got it rewritten by ChatGPT. I was like, wait a minute, they use words like, robust and, all these things. I'm like, wait a minute, this actually sounds pretty good. So again, it wasn't anything long form, like, 1,500 words or things, something like that. It was short form. It was probably like 300 words, but the way they made it sound, I was like, wow, this is actually pretty cool. It really sounds good. They like the Winston's lustrous career. And I was like, wow, I wouldn't use those words, but it sounds good, right? So again, if you're doing like a bio or something like that, you want to make it sound as good as possible. Like, hey, this guy is, on top of his stuff. He's been doing this a long time, work with the world's leading brands and things like that. So AI is definitely good to kind of prop yourself up and, do things like that.
Along those same lines, I think also if you include the audience who you're trying
Correct.
to reach, it'll write for that audience.
Exactly.
And even the goals. I've had things where I let it know, what is the CTA here? Am I trying to drive, them to, what is the action I want them to take? When you put that in there, then that starts getting woven into the output as well.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. The refinement is extremely important. If you don't get what you want, give it more data, right? Because
Yeah,
again, it's a language model, right? It learns. So the more input that you can give it to get specific on what you want, the better the response is going to be.
absolutely.
Yeah,
I think Gen AI, it doesn't understand nuance.
exactly.
Yeah, you have to really be specific and talk to it like a 6-year-old and really say, this is what I want you to do.
Exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
that's cool. Well, what do you think is coming down the pipe in terms of Gen AI and SEO?
Definitely, I would say more automation in terms of task completion.
Hmm.
More specifically with Google, I would say. So, for example, and I think there's some evidence of this now. You're going to be able to book flights. You're going to be able to book, trips. You're going to be able to, book a restaurant at your favorite, restaurant wherever you're located in the world. You're going to be able to do that, right? It's just going to get better, in my opinion. We're at kind of the stage of, think about the .com era when it first started out. You have business people who kind of understand technology people, but they made it work, right? And hence where we are in the stage of the internet. So apply that to AI. We're in infancy right now. Large language models are going to get better. They're going to be specific models that are out there that are going to be trained in, let's say, for example, you don't want to get medical advice from ChatGPT, right? You want a large language model that's versed and trained on medical language, the most updated standards, right? So you have these specific verticalized models that are going to be experts and trained on all the expert data in this particular vertical, right? So that is sort of like a supercomputer, right? Where you're going to be an expert in all things because you're trained on all these specific models, right? So that's the future, in my opinion, that we're going to get better and it's going to be more automated. I'm waiting for the tool set to catch up. As I
Yeah.
mentioned, initially that a lot of people are just creating tools just to create a tool, right? One of the things you need to think about is what business challenge am I solving, right? How is
Yes.
this tool going to solve a business challenge that I'm currently not getting with, writer.com or, jasper.com or whatever kind of software you're using, right? So I think if you could verticalize it and, kind of differentiate your product in a marketplace, then I think, you'll definitely probably get more users and, differentiate yourself. But definitely going to be a lot of automation. It's going to be get a lot better, and it's going to be a lot of like task completion and things like that could be done.
So interesting. And yeah, I think you're right on. It comes down to getting the right Gen AI tech stack. That's
Exactly.
something I've been really working with clients to try to help them do. And I think the biggest surprise that they have is that it's not always about the shiny new thing.
No,
Sometimes your
absolutely.
existing tools now have so many Gen AI
Oh
upgrades
yeah,
added to them, right?
absolutely. Look at Grammarly, right?
Right?
Grammarly is a perfect example, and I used it the other day, and I'm like, wow, this is really good.
Yes.
I thought this was really good. And I'm like, wow, everybody's integrating AI into their workflows and their processes, right? So,
Yes.
if you're not doing that, and one other point I'd like to touch on, for people out there who think that AI is going to take their jobs, hey, that could be a real thing. If you
Hmm.
don't learn to use AI, I got news for you. You might not be, marketable in the future. So I
Exactly.
tell everybody embrace this stuff. It's not going away, right?
Hmm.
It's here to stay. It's here to basically think about it as your personal assistant, right? It's here to make your life a little bit better and a little bit easier and a little bit more efficient. So if you're not embracing it and not learning it, then you need to start.
Oh my God, you're so right. And I always say, and I know I'm not the only one who says this, but it won't be AI that takes your job. It'll be the person who knows how to use AI who
Exactly.
will. Yeah.
Exactly. Absolutely.
And that's where we are completely. And you brought up Grammarly. I don't know if you've been in Canva anytime recently, but Canva now, remember how much time we used to spend formatting decks?
Yes. Yes.
Canva, you put in your bullet points, you tell it the audience, the topic, and it has your brand kit. It will make a PowerPoint for you, a
Wow.
beautiful
Yeah,
PowerPoint.
it's scary. Like honestly, it's scary. Like the stuff that's out there. Like we were making a Gantt chart the other day, and I was like, why am I doing this by hand in Excel?
Right?
I looked for AI presentation tools, and I found some. And I was like, this is not what I need. However, this one's good and that one's good. I'm like, wow, it looks like visually appealing, right?
Yeah.
State of the art. And I'm just like, it did that like in a fraction of a second. I'm like, wow, this is just amazing. And again, we're at the tip of the iceberg on, what's going to be, capable in the
Hmm.
near future. So I expect more great things to come.
I do too. It's such an exciting time. Everything, like you said, is changing so fast.
Yeah,
That's why I think it's so important that people do pay attention. They read Human Driven AI, listen to the podcast.
exactly.
But you gotta stay on top of it. I mean, even it's my sole focus to stay on top of this.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
every day there's so many new tools that I'll write a blog post or put together some article or something. And then the next day, something will come out that'll almost negate what I just
Yes.
came up with, So now I
Exactly.
got to update. But that's what makes it exciting, though, because it
Oh
goes back
yeah.
to what you said at the very beginning. AI is solving business problems for us.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah,
And that,
there was actually one that I found the other day that actually helps you find leads from a business development perspective. And I mean, that's one of the livelihood of an agency is, of course, to
mhm,
find new clients all the time, right? And there's different ways to do this now. It's not about getting on the phone and calling people anymore. I mean, those are kind of techniques that used to be used in the past. Now there's AI tools that are actually helping you find leads who are for people who are actually in market. And that's the
ex-
key. I mean, we all get, I can't tell you as an SEO from LinkedIn, I get at least 50 emails about guest posts. And I'm like, guys, if you send me one more post about guest posts, it's like I would just want to delete my account. It's like it's just gotten that. And I'm like, I'm not looking for services, right? If I was, I would have reached out to you. So it's
exactly.
always about finding people that, are in market, which these tools are actually helping to do.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, making us quicker, smarter. The amount of data that even like a chat GPT or a Claude or Bard, you can just put a question in there to say, okay, this is what my company does. What are my competitors doing? Where, I mean, it will find those white spaces for you strategically
Yeah.
to optimize white space and drive new sales and develop content around what your competitors are not talking about.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely. I got a perfect example for you, and I'm glad that you mentioned this, right? So we're talking to a prospect the other day, and one of the questions we asked, like, how'd you find us? And he was like, here's a story for you. I use ChatGPT. So he put in, I forgot the exact query, but I think he put in like top SEO and CRO companies, right?
mhm,
And we came up. And I'm like, wow, he used ChatGPT to get, some information. Of course, it's back in,
yep,
2021, but the fact is that this is a different discovery channel, right? And user
yes.
behavior is going to change, right? So people are, using, ChatGPT and Bard and, other large language model platforms that are out there. It's changing. So you want to make sure that you're actually allowing them to ingest your content and not blocking it from them so they could crawl your information and get your information. So just shows you
It's
that, like,
incredible.
wow, it's really insane.
Yeah. And what do people need to do in order to make sure that these tools do crawl their content?
So I know that there was an article that came out the other day. I believe it was like Google Bard or something like that, where they're saying that there's certain like robots commands that you could put in to disallow them from crawling your site if you want them, because the robots.txt file is the way that search engines look for to see specifically, okay, what could I crawl and what can I not crawl. So
Mm.
if you're like a large site and you have like a bunch of duplicate content or legal language like terms of use, privacy policy, which are good for users, but really search engines don't really find any value out of that. And there's such things, such budget, right? So you don't want them crawling pages that really have, no value in terms of, visitors and, ranking value and things like that. So typically people just block them out by, adding in the robots.txt. But there's definitely certain rules and derivatives that you can put in to say, don't block this content. You could read this content, not read that content, etc.
That is so cool. And yeah, it's such a good example of using these tools because I know so many people think it's just about creating copy or generating an image, but it's not. You can have real
No,
conversations with these tools
exactly.
strategically.
Yeah. And I think you said it right previously. Audience, who's your audience, right? If you
Um,
know who your audience is, you know who you're trying to target, you know what they need, then your message should be compelling. Whether it's, integrated media, you want to attack them from all channels, SEO, PPC, display, programmatic, etc. It has to be consistent, right? And people see consistent messages, then they'll probably convert.
I love it. I love it. This is so great. Well, thank you so much for joining me on
All right,
this,
you're welcome.
Winston.
Thank you. It was
I
a pleasure to
really
see you as
appreciate
well.
it. You
Absolutely.
too,
We'll talk
man.
soon. All right. Take care.
Definitely.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for watching and listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe.